Welcome to Hauntales, where darkest stories come alive. I know many of you tune into these tales to drift off to sleep, so settle in, relax, and get comfortable. Whether you're lying in bed or curled up on the couch, let the whispers of these chilling encounters carry you away. Before we begin tonight's story, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more spine-tingling tales, and let me know in the comments where are you listening from, and what time is it. I love seeing how far our stories travel. For the best experience, use your headphones, close your eyes, and let every word sink deep into your mind. Now we begin our stories for tonight. The Book of Endings. Chapter 1. The countdown begins. The room felt smaller than usual. 4 walls pressing in, suffocating. My pulse throbbed in my ears, louder than the ticking clock hanging on the wall opposite me. I sat frozen, my eyes fixed on the open book in front of me, unable to tear myself away from the words that had appeared only moments ago. And in exactly 30 minutes, Nathaniel Frost will be dead. It was impossible. It had to be some sort of trick, but the cold pit forming in my stomach told me otherwise. My name, my own name, was written there in the old, yellowed pages of the book. A book one shouldn't have touched. A book that had found its way into my life under the strangest circumstances. I looked up from the page, and my eyes darted to the clock again. 28 minutes now. It was absurd, yet it wasn't. I could feel it creeping in. That terror that defied all rational thought. Something was coming for me. I didn't know what, but I could sense it like the thick, oppressive humidity before a violent storm. I had to do something. Anything. But my mind was a fog, and my legs felt as though they were weighed down by invisible anchors. I couldn't just sit there and wait to die, could I? I stood, but it felt like moving through syrup, my legs trembling beneath me as though the floor might give way at any moment. I stumbled toward the door, almost instinctively, but stopped in my tracks. What was I even running from? What could I possibly escape? I turned back to the book, still lying open on the table, its pages slightly fluttering in the draft of the room. 25 minutes now. Time was slipping away, and my heart thumped wildly in my chest. I forced myself to breathe, trying to think, Nathaniel, think. There had to be a way out of this. If I could figure out how I got here, maybe I could find a way to change the ending. Maybe. But the truth was, I knew exactly how I got here. This wasn't some random nightmare or sick joke. No, it had all started a week ago when that damned book fell into my hands. I glanced back down at the pages, at the black ink spelling out my doom. I was losing precious seconds, but the story needed to be told. Maybe if I pieced together everything that had happened, I could make sense of it all. Maybe if I looked for clues, anything could change what felt inevitable. 23 minutes. I pressed my palms to my temples, willing myself to stay calm. This is where it had all begun. Here in this tiny apartment, in this suffocating room, with that accursed book. I let out a long breath, sitting back down on the edge of the chair, my legs giving out beneath me as I sank into the seat. My mind drifted back to that day, to when the man first appeared in the bookstore. It had seemed like an ordinary encounter at first, but now, with the weight of what was happening, it was anything but. Chapter 2. The Man in the Bookstore. The day had started like any other. Mornings in the bookstore were quiet, as usual. A couple of hours would pass without anyone coming in, which gave me plenty of time to catch up on the stacks of old inventory, arranging them into the correct categories or flipping through the pages of something interesting myself. That day, however, had felt different, though I hadn't realized it at the time. It wasn't the kind of difference you could put your finger on immediately. It was more like an itch at the back of my mind, a subtle unease that gnawed at me as I went through my routine. Maybe it was the weather. Storm clouds had gathered outside, casting long shadows across the windows and muting the light inside the shop. The air felt heavier too, though the summer heat hadn't been particularly intense. It was one of those days where time seemed to stretch, where minutes ticked by like hours. I was standing behind the counter, flipping through a novel someone had left behind on the register, when I noticed him. He was standing near the back, close to the section that housed the more antique, forgotten books. I didn't hear the bell ring when he entered, and I hadn't seen him walk in. One moment the shop was empty, and the next there he was, standing there as if he had always been there. He was old, frail even, His face was pale and weathered, with deep creases around his eyes and mouth. His hair was thin and white, but it wasn't his appearance that gave me pause, it was his eyes. They were sharp, almost too sharp, scanning the shelves with an intensity that made me feel like he wasn't just looking for a book. He was searching for something specific. I cleared my throat, thinking that maybe he was one of those eccentric collectors who knew exactly what they wanted. But he didn't acknowledge me. He just kept staring at the shelves. I watched him for a moment longer before I went back to the book one was thumbing through, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. Minutes passed, and I almost forgot about him until he approached the counter. I jumped slightly, surprised at how quietly he had moved across the shop. He was holding a book. I didn't recognize it, which was strange because I knew almost every title in the store. It was small, bound in a dark, cracked leather, with no title or markings on the cover. He held it out toward me with a bony hand. "This one," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "This one is for you." I blinked, caught off guard by his words. "For me?" I stared at the book, hesitant to take it, but something compelled me to reach out and accept it. "I thank you, but I don't," I began, but he interrupted me. "Take it, you'll need it." His voice was strange, distant, as if he was speaking from somewhere far away. Before I could respond, he turned and shuffled out of the store, his movements slow but deliberate. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door long after he had gone. Something about the encounter felt wrong. The way he had spoken, the way he had just left without another word, it didn't sit right with me. I looked down at the book in my hands, and a chill ran down my spine. It was cold, unnaturally so, like the leather had been sitting in ice. I hesitated, my fingers brushing the edges of the cover. I should have put it back on the shelf. I should have tossed it aside and forgotten about it. But curiosity has a way of sinking its claws into you, and before I knew it, I was thumbing through the pages. Chapter 3. The Curse of the Pages. The first few pages were blank, completely devoid of any text or markings. The paper felt old, fragile, as if it would crumble at the slightest touch. But as I flipped further into the book, words began to appear. Faint at first, but then darker, clearer. What I read sent a chill down my spine. The first chapter was a strange, fragmented story about a woman named Elise who had found the book in a similar manner. She had been given the book by a mysterious stranger, much like the man who had handed it to me. The details were hauntingly specific. She had lived in a small town, worked at a flower shop, and had received the book from a customer who disappeared soon after. The story chronicled her slow descent into madness as she realized that the book was writing about her life. Every decision, every action she took was recorded in its pages, as though the book was alive, chronicling her every move. The last few pages of her chapter were disturbing. The book had predicted her death, describing it in vivid detail. She had tried to escape, to run from the fate written for her, but in the end, it didn't matter. The book knew, and it had taken her. My fingers trembled as I closed the book, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real. It was just a story, a strange coincidence, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Chapter 4. My chapter begins. For days, I tried to ignore the book. I shoved it into the back of a drawer in my apartment, hoping that out of sight would mean out of mind. But no matter how hard I tried to forget about it, the memory of those words gnawed at me. The book had written about Elise with such vivid detail. What if it could do the same for me? It was a ridiculous thought, a superstition born out of fear. But the more I tried to convince myself of that, the more I found myself wondering about the blank pages that lay at the back of the book. They were waiting for something. I could feel it. One night, unable to resist any longer, I pulled the book out of the drawer and opened it. My heart skipped a beat when I saw my name at the top of the next chapter. Nathaniel Frost. The handwriting was crisp. Elegant, and somehow chilling. Each letter seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I felt as if I were staring into a dark abyss, the ink shimmering like a shadowy portal. I was frozen, caught between dread and morbid curiosity. I took a deep breath and forced myself to read on. The words unfolded like a nightmarish tapestry, weaving together fragments of my life that felt eerily familiar yet distorted. The chapter described a typical day in my life: waking up, going to work at the bookstore, sipping coffee on my way there, the endless chatter with customers. But then, it veered into darker territory. And as Nathaniel Frost opened the dusty tome, a shiver ran down his spine. He could not shake the feeling that something was watching him, waiting for him to turn the next page. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in my throat. I hadn't told anyone about the book. How could it possibly know about that moment? The sensation of being watched was all too real, and it gripped me with icy fingers. The passage went on, detailing a series of events leading up to my demise. It described my encounter with a dark presence that lurked in the corners of my mind, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. The final line sent a chill through my body. At exactly 12 minutes past midnight, Nathaniel Frost would meet his end. Alone in the cold embrace of his forgotten apartment, he would succumb to the terror he could not outrun. I dropped the book, my breath coming in rapid gasps. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, and I could feel time slipping away, just like the words on the page had warned. What was happening? How was this possible? 12 minutes left. My mind raced with possibilities. I had to find the old man, the one who had given me the book. Maybe he had the answers. I could demand he take the book back. Maybe he was the key to breaking this horrifying curse. I bolted from my chair, racing out of my apartment and into the night. The streets were eerily quiet, shadows stretching across the pavement under the faint glow of streetlights. The usual hum of the city felt distant, swallowed by a thick fog that rolled in from nowhere. As I hurried to the bookstore, I could feel the air growing heavier, pressing against my chest. Panic gnawed at me, but I forced myself to push it aside. I had to stay focused. I needed answers. Chapter 5. The Old Man's Secret. The bookstore was dark when I arrived. The lights dimmed as the closing hour had long passed. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking, and finally managed to unlock the door. A bell tinkled softly as I stepped inside, the familiar scent of aged paper and dust wrapping around me like an old friend. Hello, my voice echoed through the stillness, but there was no response. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. Where was he? As I moved further inside, I was drawn to the back of the store, the same corner where I had first seen him. The shadows seemed to thicken, swirling in a way that made my skin prickle. "Sir," I called again, desperation lacing my voice. I ventured deeper, my heart racing as I passed the shelves laden with books that felt like silent witnesses to my unraveling. The fear that had been simmering within me began to boil over as I rounded the corner. And there he was, the old man, sitting at a small wooden table, a flickering candle casting dancing shadows around him. He looked up, his sharp eyes glinting in the low light. "You've returned," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "I need to know why you gave me that book," one demanded, my voice trembling. "It's writing about my death. How is that even possible?" He leaned back in his chair, the flicker of the candle illuminating the deep creases in his face. "The book chooses its reader. It reveals the truth of one's fate, but it does not dictate it." I was incredulous. "What do you mean? It's predicting my death?" "The words are a reflection of your fears, Nathaniel. The book feeds off your uncertainty. It knows your vulnerabilities and exploits them, but you have the power to change your fate." How I pressed, my voice growing frantic. "What do I have to do?" He leaned forward, his expression grave. "You must confront what the book reveals. Accept your fears, face them head on, and rewrite the ending of your story. Only then can you break the curse." I felt a mix of anger and desperation. "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who's going to die." The old man's gaze softened. "No, but I have seen many who have faced the same fate. They all succumb to their fears, allowing the book to dictate their demise. You can be different, Nathaniel." "What if I can't?" I whispered, doubt creeping in. "Then you will remain a prisoner of your own making." I felt the weight of his words press down on me. I couldn't accept this fate, I wouldn't. But where did I even begin to confront the shadows lurking within me? Chapter 6. A Dark Revelation. I left the bookstore with a storm raging inside me. The old man's words echoed in my mind as I walked the deserted streets, each step heavy with uncertainty. I had to face my fears. But what did that even mean? What was waiting for me in the shadows? As I turned down a narrow alley, I felt an unsettling presence behind me, a sensation that prickled at the back of my neck. I glanced back but saw nothing, just the flickering lights casting eerie shadows. My heart raced, the cold air wrapping around me like a shroud. I needed to think. I headed to the park nearby, hoping the open space would clear my mind. The trees loomed like sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. I found a bench and sat down, trying to catch my breath. What were my fears? They had always been there, lurking just beneath the surface, but I had pushed them aside for so long. It wasn't just the fear of dying, it was the fear of failure, of being alone, of not living up to expectations. But was that enough to seal my fate? I had to dig deeper, confront the ghosts that haunted me. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, willing myself to focus. Memories flooded back my childhood, my parents' expectations, the weight of responsibility that had settled on my shoulders since I was young, the fear of disappointing them, of being seen as a failure in their eyes. I had run from it, hiding in the comfort of routine and normalcy, but it was time to face it head-on. As I opened my eyes, a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the park. My heart lurched. It was a woman, her features shrouded in darkness. I squinted, trying to make out her face. "Help me," she called, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "You have to stop it before it's too late." "Who are you?" I shouted, but she didn't answer. She turned, her silhouette moving deeper into the shadows, beckoning me to follow. Driven by instinct, I got up and pursued her, weaving through the trees and bushes, the air thick with tension. My heart raced as I navigated the darkness, the figure always just ahead, slipping further away. "Wait," I called out, but the more I ran, the further she seemed to drift. It was maddening. Finally, I stumbled into a clearing and halted. The woman stood there, bathed in moonlight, revealing her features, long dark hair framing a pale face, eyes filled with a sorrow I couldn't quite place. "Who are you?" I panted, trying to catch my breath. "I am a warning," she said, her voice trembling. "I was like you, drawn to the book. I thought I could escape it. But it's a trap. You can't outrun what's already written." "What do you mean?" I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. "The book reflects your fears, Nathaniel. If you don't confront them, you'll lose everything. I lost my chance, and now I'm trapped in this nightmare." "What happened to you?" I thought I could outsmart it. I ignored the signs, thinking I was stronger, but it knew me better than I knew myself. I am a shadow now, bound to the pages. A tremor ran through me. Was this what awaited me? "What can I do?" I asked, desperation clawing at my throat. "You must confront the truth," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The book reveals your greatest fear, and if you cannot face it, you will be consumed. You cannot run. You must fight." With that, she stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as she had quivered. I stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking in. My greatest fear was me, my self-doubt, my inability to confront the pressure and expectations that had suffocated me for years. Chapter 7. The Tides of Fate. The following days blurred into one another as I struggled to reconcile the truth with my fear. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown, and every glance at the book heightened my anxiety. I knew what I had to do, but could I summon the courage? Determined to face my fears, I began writing down everything that haunted me. Each word felt like a release, a small act of defiance against the dark pull of the book. I wrote about my childhood, my relationship with my parents, my aspirations, and my failures. I poured my heart onto the pages, creating a dialogue with my fear. But I still felt unprepared when the midnight hour approached. I could hear the clock ticking in the back of my mind, a constant reminder that time was running out. That night, I sat on my bed, the book open in front of me. I was ready to confront whatever awaited me. The room felt suffocating, the shadows closing in as the clock neared midnight. My heart raced in tandem with the ticking, each second a reminder of the darkness lurking just beyond reach. At precisely midnight, the air shifted. The book trembled, and I felt a presence envelop me, a sensation that sent chills down my spine. I braced myself, steeling my resolve. But instead of horror, I found myself enveloped in a surreal vision. I stood in a vast void, surrounded by swirling shadows. My younger self appeared, an embodiment of all my fears and insecurities. "You've always run from me," the figure said, its voice a haunting echo, "but you cannot escape. I am a part of you." I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. I don't want to be afraid anymore. The shadow loomed closer, its gaze penetrating, then embraced me. Acknowledge the fear, let it fuel your strength. I felt the weight of its words. My fear had controlled me for too long. I took a deep breath, allowing the darkness to wash over me. I see you. I acknowledge you. You won't define me. As I spoke those words, the void began to shift. The shadows that had once felt suffocating transformed into wisps of light. I opened my eyes, panting, the book still lying in front of me. The oppressive presence had lifted, leaving a profound sense of peace in its wake. I had confronted my fear, and in doing so I had reclaimed my power. Chapter 8. Rewriting my fate. The days that followed felt different, lighter. I returned to the bookstore and sought out the old man, feeling a surge of determination within me. When I found him, I shared my experience, my voice steady. I faced my fear. I won't let the book control my fate. He smiled, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. You've broken the cycle, Nathaniel. But remember, the battle is never truly over. Fear will always be there, lurking in the shadows. It's how you choose to confront it that defines your story. I nodded, absorbing his words. The journey had just begun, but I was no longer a prisoner of my own making. As I left the bookstore, I felt a sense of liberation. The dark cloud that had once loomed over me had dissipated, replaced by the realization that I held the pen to my own narrative. I could forge my path, undeterred by the whispers of doubt that had haunted me for so long. And while the book still lay in my bag, I no longer feared its contents. Instead, I viewed it as a reminder of my strength, a symbol of the journey I had undertaken. As I stepped into the sunlight, a smile crept across my face. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that my fate was mine to shape. Chapter 9. The Shadow Returns. Life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Each day brought new challenges, but I faced them with a newfound strength. I was no longer the anxious man weighed down by the shadows of my fears. I embraced opportunities, forged new connections, and relished moments of joy. However, the peace was fleeting. One evening, as I settled into bed, I felt a familiar chill creeping into the room. My heart raced as I turned off the light, plunging myself into darkness. I tried to dismiss the feeling, telling myself it was just a remnant of the past, but the unease persisted. It was as if a storm was brewing in the depths of my mind. That night I dreamt of the book, a nightmarish vision where the words twisted and turned, becoming more sinister than before. It whispered my name, enticing me to open its pages, to delve into the darkness once more. When I woke up, drenched in sweat, panic surged within me. I glanced at the clock, 3 a.m. The air felt electric, charged with an energy I couldn't understand. I had thought I was free, but now I feared the book was still waiting, biding its time. Desperate for answers, I decided to visit the old man again. I dressed quickly and made my way to the bookstore, the night air thick with anticipation. When I arrived, the bell tinkled softly as I pushed open the door. The store was dimly lit, the scent of old paper filling the air. I hurried to the back where the old man often sat. "Sir," I called out, my voice echoing through the stillness. He looked up, his expression serious. "You've returned sooner than I expected. What troubles you?" The book, one said, my voice trembling. "It's not over. I can feel it. It's trying to draw me back in." The old man nodded, his eyes narrowing. "You've only scratched the surface, Nathaniel. The book's power is not to be underestimated. It thrives on your fear, feeding off your energy. You must confront it once more." "What do?" I asked, my heart racing. "You must return to it, open the pages again, but this time with the knowledge you have gained. Face the darkest part of yourself, and only then can you sever the connection." The gravity of his words settled over me like a heavy cloak. Could I truly confront the darkness that lurked within? Chapter 10. Facing the Darkness. With a newfound determination, I returned home and retrieved the book from my bag. The cover felt cold beneath my fingertips, as if it were alive. I sat on my bed, the room cloaked in shadow, and opened the book to the chapter that had predicted my demise. The words swirled before me, taunting and challenging. I felt the familiar pull, the whispers beckoning me to read. But I was not the same man who had first opened these pages. I steeled my resolve and began to read. As I read, I felt the room around me shift, the walls closing in as the shadows deepened. The words transformed, and I was drawn into a vision, a dark alley where I faced my fears personified. There I stood, trembling, staring down a version of myself, a shadowy doppelganger that embodied all my self-doubt and insecurities. "You thought you could escape me," it hissed, its voice dripping with venom. "You are nothing without your fears. You will always be a failure." "No," I shouted, my voice echoing in the void. "You don't control me. I am more than my fears." The shadow lunged at me, and I braced for impact. But as it collided with me, I felt a surge of energy. I closed my eyes, allowing my emotions to flow: anger, sadness, regret, and ultimately acceptance. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I declared, my voice steady. "You are part of me, but you don't define me." The shadow recoiled, its form flickering like a dying flame. I extended my hand toward it, feeling a warmth radiate from within me. "I accept you, but I refuse to be controlled by you." As I spoke those words, the shadow began to dissolve, dissipating into wisps of smoke that swirled around me before fading away completely. A profound silence enveloped me, and I opened my eyes to find myself back in my room. The book lay before me, the words now glowing softly on the pages. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the oppressive energy that had lingered for so long finally dissipating. I had faced my fears and emerged victorious. Chapter 11. A New Dawn. The next morning, I woke to a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced before. The sun streamed through my window, bathing the room in warm light. I felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from my spirit. I took the book and placed it back on the shelf, no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of my journey. I stepped outside, breathing in the fresh air and embracing the beauty of a new day. As I walked through the streets, I saw the world differently. The colors were more vibrant, the laughter of children echoed like music, and the simple act of being alive filled me with gratitude. I felt a sense of purpose, a determination to live fully and embrace the unknown. No longer would I allow fear to dictate my choices. I would pursue my passions, connect with people, and live a life of authenticity. Chapter 12. Reflections of the Past. As days turned into weeks, I found myself reflecting on my journey more deeply. I started journaling, documenting the lessons I had learned and the fears I had faced. The act of writing became a therapeutic release, allowing me to process my thoughts and emotions. I wrote about my childhood, how the pressure to succeed had shaped my identity, and how the fear of disappointing my parents had kept me from pursuing my dreams. I realized that I had built walls around myself, fearing rejection and failure. But now those walls had crumbled. I reflected on the connections I had made, the friendships that had blossomed, the moments of laughter shared over coffee, and the kindness of strangers that had touched my heart. I had learned to embrace vulnerability, recognizing it as a strength rather than a weakness. I wrote about the woman I had encountered in the park, the warning she had given me. I realized she was a reflection of my own fears, a reminder that ignoring the shadows would only lead to entrapment. I vowed never to ignore my intuition again. Chapter 13. Embracing the Journey. With each passing day, I felt more grounded and connected to myself. I began volunteering at a local community center, sharing my love for reading with children who needed guidance. Seeing their faces light up as I read to them filled me with joy. It was a reminder of the power of stories and the importance of connection. I also rekindled my love for writing, channeling my experiences into short stories and essays. The act of creating became a form of healing, allowing me to explore the complexities of fear, courage, and resilience. In the quiet moments of self-reflection, I understood that fear would always exist, but it no longer held power over me. Instead of running from it, I learned to face it with courage and grace. I had transformed my relationship with fear from a foe into a teacher, guiding me toward growth and self-discovery. Chapter 14. The Echoes of Fear. One evening, as I sat in my favorite coffee shop, pen in hand, I paused to reflect on how far I had come. The journey had not been easy, but every struggle had shaped me into the person I was becoming. Suddenly, I felt a chill run through the air. It was subtle at first, but it quickly grew stronger. I glanced around the shop, noticing the shadows lengthening on the walls. The atmosphere shifted, and the once vibrant energy felt heavy. Panic rose within me, but I took a deep breath, Grounding myself in the moment, I reminded myself that I had faced darkness before and emerged stronger. I closed my eyes and centered my thoughts, repeating a mantra: I am not afraid. When I opened my eyes, the chill had dissipated, and the warmth of the coffee shop enveloped me once more. I smiled, realizing that I was still in control of my narrative. The echoes of fear might come and go, but I would always have the power to confront them. Chapter 15. A Life Rewritten. The days turned into months, and I continued to embrace the journey of self-discovery. I made it a point to check in with myself regularly, reflecting on my fears and celebrating my victories no matter how small. I forged deeper connections with friends, shared my experiences openly, and sought out opportunities that terrified me. Each challenge became a stepping stone toward growth, and I began to understand that vulnerability was not a weakness, it was a catalyst for genuine connection. Looking back on the book, I realized that it had been a powerful catalyst for change. It had forced me to confront the darkest parts of myself and emerge stronger. I felt gratitude for the lessons learned and the person I was becoming, a person who would not shy away from fear but rather embrace it as part of the journey. As I walked through life, I carried with me the knowledge that fear would always be there, but it was how I chose to respond that defined my story. With each step forward, I wrote a new chapter, one filled with courage, resilience, and the unwavering belief that I could shape my own fate. The Hollow's Curse. Deep within Blackwood Forest, where sunlight struggled to pierce the thick canopy, a cabin stood, a lonely structure of weathered timber and faded paint. The wood was darkened with age, splintered in places, and the roof sagged beneath the weight of time. Vines snaked up the sides, their tendrils creeping toward the eaves like fingers, seeking to reclaim the structure for nature. Surrounding the cabin, towering trees were etched with strange, angular symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, creating an atmosphere that felt charged, as if the very forest was holding its breath. Margaret, the cabin's last known occupant, had been a reclusive figure, often seen wandering the woods, her long tattered skirts brushing against the undergrowth. Rumors of her involvement with the occult spread like wildfire among the nearby townsfolk. They claimed she conducted rituals by moonlight, calling upon ancient forces to heal the sick or commune with spirits. Some said she could bend nature to her will, drawing power from the very trees that now loomed protectively over her abandoned home. Yet, despite her mystical reputation, she was also a figure of fear, an enigmatic presence whose motives remained shrouded in mystery. Years ago, she disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only echoes of her existence. The cabin fell into disrepair, its windows shattered, the door hanging precariously from rusted hinges. Locals recalled the day she vanished. The sky darkened unexpectedly, and a fierce wind howled through the trees. They spoke of a blinding flash of light emanating from the cabin just before silence descended, as if the very woods had swallowed her whole. Many who ventured close afterward reported feeling a strange pull, as though the cabin itself was alive and beckoning, waiting for someone to unlock the secrets of its dark history. Over time, the forest reclaimed the area, wrapping the cabin in a thick embrace of foliage and shadow. The symbols carved into the trees bore witness to the ancient rituals once performed, their meanings long forgotten but still potent, imbuing the very ground with a lingering sense of dread. Each passing year seemed to deepen the cabin's isolation, yet those brave enough to approach could sense the residual energy lingering in the air. It was as if the forest itself had become a guardian of Margaret's secrets, hiding the truth behind her disappearance, while drawing in the curious and the unwary alike. The cabin remained a silent sentinel, waiting patiently for the next soul to venture into its depths, unaware of the curse that lingered within. David and Emily had been together for 3 years, their relationship forged in the vibrant chaos of urban life. Both in their late 20s, they were weary from the demands of their jobs, David as a graphic designer and Emily as a school teacher. The relentless pace of the city had begun to wear them down, filling their days with stress and their nights with the hum of traffic and fluorescent lights. As autumn approached, the couple craved an escape, a chance to reconnect with each other and with nature, far away from the daily grind. After weeks of searching for the perfect getaway, they stumbled upon a quaint town nestled on the edge of Blackwood Forest. The town's charm was palpable, with its cobblestone streets, antique shops, and cozy cafes serving artisanal coffee. They spent their first day exploring, enjoying local delicacies at a small diner where the owner regaled them with tales of the area's history. The town's serene atmosphere was a welcome contrast to their hectic lives, providing a brief glimpse of the tranquility they sought. However, after a few days in the town, David and Emily decided to ask a local for recommendations on hiking trails. They had enjoyed their time exploring the charming streets and sampling the local fare, but now they were eager to immerse themselves in the natural beauty of Blackwood Forest. While seated at the diner, they approached an older woman with kind eyes who had been quietly enjoying her meal. As they inquired about good hiking spots, her expression shifted, her brow furrowing, as if grappling with a heavy memory. "The woods can be beautiful," she replied, her voice measured and soft, "but there are places best left untouched. The cabin deep in the forest, it's not just a story. Strange things happen there. People have gone missing, vanished without a trace. It's best to heed the warnings." David and Emily exchanged glances, a mix of intrigue and trepidation stirring within them. They had heard whispers of odd occurrences around the cabin but brushed them aside as local folklore meant to frighten outsiders. Despite the woman's concern, they felt a growing sense of curiosity that overshadowed their apprehensions. Her words only intensified their desire to explore, igniting a spark of adventure that was hard to extinguish. They thanked her politely, but as they left the diner, the weight of her warnings lingered in the air. The cabin now loomed in their minds, a siren call beckoning them into the depths of the forest, tempting them to uncover the mysteries hidden within its decaying walls. Later that day, while walking hand in hand through the town's small market, they overheard snippets of conversation from locals who, like the woman, advised against exploring Blackwood Forest. Rumors of Margaret's disappearance and the strange symbols on the trees lingered in the air like a heavy fog. Emily felt a thrill of fear and intrigue. She had always been fascinated by the supernatural. David, equally intrigued, tried to rationalize the tales, convincing himself that urban legends were often exaggerated. Determined to shake off the ominous feelings, they returned to their inn, where the cozy atmosphere provided a temporary refuge from the unsettling stories. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they discussed their plans for the next day. They envisioned a peaceful hike through the forest, picturing sun-dappled trails and vibrant foliage. Despite the warnings, their desire for adventure and exploration proved stronger than their apprehensions. The following morning, armed with a map and a backpack filled with supplies for a couple of nights in the woods, David and Emily set off toward the forest. Their packs were loaded with essentials: a tent, sleeping bags, a portable stove, and a carefully chosen selection of food, dried fruits, trail mix, and sandwiches for lunch. They had also brought a thermos filled with hot coffee, eager to enjoy it amid the rustling leaves and crisp autumn air. As they stood at the forest's edge, a hint of apprehension fluttered in their stomachs, but excitement quickly overshadowed it. They had come seeking adventure, not aware of the shadows that lurked just beyond the sunlight. As they crossed into the forest's embrace, a wave of tranquility washed over them. The gentle rustling of leaves overhead created a soothing symphony, while the earthy scent of damp soil and moss filled their lungs. towering trees stood sentinel, their trunks gnarled and thick, as if guarding the secrets of the woods. Emily couldn't help but smile as she marveled at the vibrant colors of autumn. Rich reds, oranges, and yellows painted the landscape in a breathtaking display. It was a stark contrast to the muted grays of city life, and she felt the weight of their everyday stresses begin to lift. The first few hours of hiking were pure bliss. They wandered along a narrow trail, lined with ferns and wildflowers, and the air buzzed with the sound of chirping birds and rustling critters. David pointed out a family of deer grazing quietly in a clearing, their delicate movements graceful and serene. Emily snapped photos, her laughter ringing through the trees, as she captured the idyllic moments of their journey. They took breaks to sip coffee, reveling in the beauty of their surroundings, feeling more connected to each other and the world around them. As they ventured deeper into the woods, they spotted various wildlife: a vibrant red fox darting across their path, a pair of hawks circling high above, and even a curious squirrel that approached them as if to say hello. The canopy above filtered sunlight into soft beams, creating a warm glow that danced on the forest floor. They shared stories and dreams, their voices mingling with the sounds of nature, completely enveloped in the serenity that the forest offered. However, as they continued along the winding path, Emily couldn't shake a nagging feeling at the back of her mind. It was subtle, a fleeting sense of being watched, perhaps amplified by the eerie silence that sometimes fell upon the woods, as if the creatures had suddenly paused in their activities. She brushed it aside, attributing it to her imagination. David, too, felt a strange energy in the air but dismissed it as excitement for the adventure ahead. They were here to explore, to create memories that would last a lifetime. After a few hours of hiking, David and Emily found a picturesque spot along a gently flowing river. The water glistened in the dappled sunlight, creating a serene oasis amidst the vibrant greens and browns of the forest. They decided it was the perfect place to take a break and enjoy their packed lunch. Settling on a flat rock near the riverbank, they unpacked their sandwiches and shared a moment of quietude, listening to the soothing sounds of the water as it meandered over smooth stones. As they ate, Emily tossed crumbs to a few curious ducks paddling nearby, their soft quacks mingling with the gentle rush of the river. David snapped candid photos of her laughter, capturing the joy of the moment. The air was crisp and fresh, filled with the sense of wet earth and fallen leaves. They felt invigorated, ready to tackle the next leg of their adventure, and after finishing their meal, they lingered a while longer, reluctant to leave the tranquility of the spot. Refreshed and inspired, they decided to venture off the marked trails to explore deeper into the forest, hoping to discover a more secluded spot for their campsite that evening. They followed a narrow, winding path that seemed to beckon them further into the woods. As they moved away from the river, the sounds of water faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of wildlife. The trees grew denser, their trunks taller and more imposing, creating an almost cathedral-like atmosphere around them. With each step, the excitement of exploration ignited their spirits, drawing them deeper into the wilderness, unaware of the mysteries waiting in the shadows. They ventured deeper into the forest. The sunlight dimmed, filtered through the dense canopy, casting long shadows that stretched like dark fingers across the trail. David could feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, an electric charge that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Emily, ever perceptive, noted the sudden silence that enveloped them. The cheerful sounds of birds and rustling animals faded, replaced by an oppressive stillness. Still, they pressed on, driven by their adventurous spirits and a sense of challenge. As they navigated through the dense underbrush, they suddenly stumbled upon a clearing that opened up like a hidden treasure. There, nestled among the towering trees, stood the cabin, a curious blend of rustic charm and nature's reclamation. The structure seemed surprisingly well preserved, its timber walls robust despite the creeping vines and moss that adorned them. Soft beams of fading sunlight filtered through the branches above, casting a warm glow on the cabin's weathered facade, lending it an almost enchanting quality. David and Emily exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and apprehension bubbling within them. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird added to the forest's symphony, creating a soundtrack that felt both alive and eerie. The cabin's presence was almost magnetic, drawing them in with promises of adventure and hidden stories. They couldn't help but feel that they had stumbled upon something special, a forgotten piece of history waiting to be rediscovered. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the forest floor, the couple realized it would be wise to set up camp for the night. With the approaching twilight, they decided the cabin would provide a perfect shelter. Nearby, they spotted a collection of dry fire logs, neatly arranged as if placed there intentionally for weary travelers. The prospect of a crackling fire and a cozy night in such a captivating location filled them with a sense of comfort. The air grew cooler, and the forest seemed to hold its breath as they approached the cabin, its silhouette becoming more defined against the dimming sky. The scent of damp earth mixed with the crispness of autumn leaves enveloped them, heightening their senses. Emily felt a thrill of both excitement and trepidation. It was as if the forest was alive, whispering secrets that only the brave could uncover. They exchanged nervous laughter, sharing in the thrill of the unknown. As they set about making the space their own, David moved closer to the cabin, intrigued by its exterior. The wood was dark and sturdy, with intricate carvings that peeked through the encroaching vines, hinting at a story waiting to be told. The windows, though dusty, were intact, and their glass still reflected the twilight in a way that made the cabin feel almost welcoming. It stood as a solitary guardian amidst the forest, a place that seemed to beckon them closer while warning them of the mysteries held within. With a final glance at the encroaching darkness, they gathered their things and prepared to make the cabin their home for the night, blissfully unaware of the shadows lurking just beyond the edges of their newfound sanctuary. Inside, the air was thick with neglect, a musty odor that mingled with the earthy scent of damp wood. As David and Emily stepped over the threshold, dust motes danced in the fading light, swirling in the remnants of sunbeams that managed to penetrate the grime-coated windows. The interior was a collage of forgotten memories, mismatched furniture draped in cobwebs, their delicate strands stretching from corners like gossamer threads of time. An old rocking chair creaked softly in the draft, its wood worn smooth from years of use, while a scarred table stood sentinel in the center of the room, its surface marred by deep scratches and faded stains. Photographs adorned the walls, each framed thick with dust, showcasing a bygone era. Margaret's presence lingered in the air, her eyes seemed to follow them as they moved, filled with a blend of warmth and wistfulness. In one photo, she stood beside a sprawling tree, her smile genuine but shadowed by an enigmatic gaze that hinted at secrets untold. Another picture captured her in a flowing dress, arms outstretched toward the sky, as if calling upon unseen forces. The portraits felt alive, echoing the stories of the cabin, each glance revealing more of her enigmatic life. The fireplace, though cold and lifeless, commanded attention at the far end of the room. Its bricks, darkened by soot, bore the remnants of many fires, and the hearth was filled with old ash that crumbled at the slightest touch. Above the mantel hung a weathered clock, its hands frozen in time, as if marking the moment Margaret vanished. Every tick that had once filled the space with warmth now felt like a ghostly reminder of the past. The firewood beside it was neatly stacked, an odd juxtaposition against the neglect surrounding it, making them wonder if someone had been here recently. To the right, a narrow staircase spiraled up into darkness, the wood creaking ominously underfoot. Curiosity tugged at Emily. She felt an inexplicable pull toward the upper level, as if something awaited them there. Yet, a sense of foreboding flickered at the edges of her thoughts. "Let's check it out later," David suggested, sensing her intrigue. They agreed to focus on their immediate surroundings, dismissing the strange impulse to explore the unknown, even as a chill crept down Emily's spine. A small kitchen area to the left showcased a collection of rusting utensils hanging from hooks, their surfaces dulled by time. An old wooden cupboard stood ajar, revealing a few chipped plates and faded glasses, remnants of meals long past. A small table set for two sat by the window, its legs uneven, suggesting it had been moved countless times. Emily caught a glimpse of something shiny beneath the tablecloth, a metal object that glimmered tantalizingly. As she reached for it, a sense of unease washed over her, and she quickly withdrew her hand, brushing it off as mere curiosity. Despite the decay, the cabin exuded a haunting charm that intrigued the couple, drawing them deeper into its embrace. Each creak of the floorboards seemed to whisper stories of love, loss, and the supernatural. They felt an unspoken connection to the place, a pull that seemed to tie their fate to Margaret's legacy. As they settled in for the night, the atmosphere thickened with secrets, the shadows around them watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal the mysteries of the cabin. As dusk descended upon Blackwood Forest, the vibrant daylight surrendered to a deepening shade of twilight, the sky painted in rich indigos and purples. The sun dipped below the horizon, its final rays casting a fleeting glow over the landscape before being swallowed by the thickening shadows. The atmosphere shifted and the air grew still, a tangible tension coiling around David and Emily as they gathered around the flickering fire. The flames flickered and danced, illuminating the cabin's interior with an ethereal glow, while the surrounding woods seemed to draw closer, as if listening intently to their every move. Outside, the forest became a realm of whispers, where every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs echoed like distant murmurs. The last calls of evening birds faded into an unsettling quiet, creating a void that seemed to amplify the heartbeat of the woods. An owl hooted softly, its sound reverberating through the trees, a solemn reminder that they were not the only inhabitants of this twilight world. The cool air began to seep into the cabin, contrasting sharply with the warmth of the fire, wrapping them in a cocoon of uncertainty that stirred their instincts. Inside, the atmosphere grew heavier, the shadows deepening as the light from the fire cast elongated silhouettes across the room. Each soft creak of the aged floorboards sent a shiver down Emily's spine, amplifying the sensation of being watched. The flickering flames threw shapes onto the walls, twisting and transforming them into fleeting apparitions that seemed to whisper secrets from the past. A soft draft swept through the cabin, carrying with it a faint scent of earth and moss, reminding them of the wildness just outside their fragile sanctuary. As the last remnants of daylight faded, the cabin felt increasingly isolated, an island in a sea of darkness. The vibrant colors of the forest muted into a monochrome canvas, where the outlines of trees loomed like sentinels guarding their hidden mysteries. David and Emily exchanged uneasy glances, the thrill of their adventure now tinged with a sense of foreboding. The fire's crackling intensified, almost as if protesting against the encroaching darkness. Each shadow that shifted felt alive, and the stillness surrounding them held a weight that pressed upon their chests, warning them that they had crossed a threshold into a realm where the past was never truly buried. On their first night, the air in the cabin felt thick with secrets as Emily shifted beneath the scratchy blankets. The fire had dwindled to glowing embers, casting a soft, flickering light that seemed to bend and twist in the corners of the room. As the shadows deepened, they appeared to stretch toward her, undulating like living things, stirring a sense of unease within her. David lay beside her, his steady breathing a comforting rhythm against the rising tide of anxiety that washed over her. Yet, even in his presence, she couldn't shake the sensation that unseen eyes lingered just beyond the edge of the dim light. As sleep slipped away, Emily found herself ensnared in a web of unsettling dreams. In the swirling darkness of her mind, she wandered through a fog-laden forest, the ground beneath her feet soft and yielding, almost as if it breathed. Ghostly figures flickered in and out of her vision, shadowy forms that whispered her name, beckoning her deeper into the woods. Each time she reached out, they melted into the mist, leaving behind a hollow ache of longing and an insatiable curiosity that gnawed at her. The air was filled with a faint melody, haunting and beautiful, echoing the incantations she had read in the journal earlier that day. With a start, Emily jolted awake, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispers from her dream echoed in her ears, intertwining with the eerie silence of the cabin. She strained to hear, convinced that the murmurs were real, that something was trying to communicate with her. The sensation of being watched intensified, and a cold breeze slipped through the cracks of the cabin, chilling her to the bone. She wrapped her arms around herself, wishing for the warmth of the fire, but the embers had faded to mere glowing ashes. The room felt oppressive, as if the very walls were closing in, their weight pressing against her thoughts. Fighting back panic, Emily turned to David, wanting to reach out, to anchor herself to his presence. But he remained in a deep slumber, oblivious to the mounting tension that encircled her. She felt a sense of isolation in that moment, a realization that she was alone in grappling with the darkness that seemed to breathe with a will of its own. The shadows in the corners appeared to shift and writhe, creating grotesque shapes that danced to the rhythm of her racing heartbeat. As she gazed into the depths of the night, she could almost hear the cabin whispering its secrets, each creak of the floorboards an invitation to uncover what lay hidden, a prelude to the unfolding terror that awaited them as dawn approached. As dawn broke, the first light of morning seeped into the cabin, chasing away the remnants of night. Emily sat up slowly, still haunted by the unsettling dreams that had gripped her. She rubbed her eyes and glanced over at David, who was stretching and yawning, oblivious to the unease that had clouded her night. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, forcing a smile as he sat up, his hair tousled and his expression bright. "Like a log," he replied, grinning. "I think the forest air really did wonders for me." He noticed the lingering tension in her features and tilted his head, concern knitting his brow. "What about you? You look a bit pale." Emily hesitated, wanting to express the sense of foreboding that still clung to her. "I just had some strange dreams," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It felt like something was watching me." David shrugged, his tone light. "It's just the atmosphere of the place. This cabin has been empty for years. It's bound to feel a bit eerie. You're probably just adjusting to the isolation." He leaned closer, placing a reassuring hand on her knee. "We're here to explore, remember. Let's focus on the adventure ahead. The forest will be amazing today." His confidence was infectious, and she found herself nodding, the weight on her chest easing slightly. After a quick breakfast of granola and fruit, they gathered their gear and prepared for the day's hike. The sun climbed higher, spilling golden light across the forest floor, illuminating the path they had taken the day before. With renewed energy, they set out, the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves enveloping them in a comforting embrace. Emily took a deep breath, trying to shake off her lingering apprehensions. They ventured deeper into the woods, following a trail that meandered along the edge of a small brook. The water sparkled like diamonds, as it tumbled over smooth stones, and Emily found herself distracted by the beauty surrounding them. Yet her mind kept flickering back to the night, the whispers that still echoed faintly in her memory. As they continued, David pointed out various flora and fauna, his enthusiasm pulling her focus back to the present. Eventually, they stumbled upon a cluster of trees marked with strange symbols, their surfaces gnarled and aged. Each carving seemed to tell a story, intertwining with the knotted bark in a way that felt deliberate and deliberate. David reached out, his fingertips tracing the contours of one particularly intricate design. "These are incredible," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's like they're alive." Emily stepped closer, studying the carvings and feeling a chill run down her spine as if the trees themselves were watching them. As David continued to examine the markings, Emily felt a strange tug at her instincts, as if the very essence of the forest was calling to her. She wandered a little farther, drawn to the way the sunlight danced through the leaves, creating flickering patterns on the forest floor. Each step felt deliberate, leading her deeper into the underbrush, where the air was rich with the scent of damp earth and moss. The sounds of the forest surrounded her, birds chirping in a lively chorus, leaves rustling like whispers among the trees. Hours passed as they explored the winding trails, marveling at nature's beauty. They came across towering rock formations and small clearings, the sights captivating them. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon with hues of orange and pink, Emily's thoughts drifted back to the cabin. She had meant to investigate a particular feeling she'd sensed earlier, a whisper of something hidden within the old structure. But as twilight approached, they decided to return, the allure of a warm fire and shared stories beckoning them back to their temporary home. When they finally stepped inside the cabin, the atmosphere felt different, charged with anticipation. The shadows lengthened, stretching ominously across the room. As they began to settle in, Emily's eyes were irresistibly drawn to the floorboards. Remembering the raised plank she had noticed before, she knelt down, brushing away the dust. With a soft creak, the board lifted easily, revealing a concealed compartment beneath. Heart racing, she peered inside and gasped softly at the sight of a weathered book, its pages yellowed and edges frayed. This discovery felt significant, as if it held answers to questions neither of them had yet thought to ask. Nestled inside was a tattered book, its leather cover cracked and worn with age. Intrigued, Emily carefully lifted it out and opened to the first page. The handwriting was elegant but faded, filled with incantations and descriptions of rituals long forgotten. A shiver of excitement coursed through her as she realized this could be a treasure trove of knowledge about the forest's mysteries and Margaret's past. She tucked the journal under her arm, eager to share her find with David, feeling that the pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. That night, emboldened by their findings, Emily carefully flipped through the pages of the journal, her fingers brushing against the delicate, yellowed paper. The book was filled with incantations and rituals tied to the forest's ancient lore, describing everything from communion with spirits to the summoning of protective entities. Drawings accompanied the text, intricate symbols that seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. Among the writings, Emily noticed a particular section dedicated to a circle of connection, meant to bridge the gap between the living and the ethereal. It claimed that by creating a circle of light, they could invite gentle spirits for guidance. "Look at this," Emily said, her eyes wide with fascination. "This ritual is about making a connection. It says we can call upon the forest spirits to share their wisdom." She glanced at David, who was kneeling beside her, his brow furrowed in thought. "Sounds interesting," he replied, a mix of skepticism and excitement in his tone. "But do you think it's safe? I mean, we don't really know what we're dealing with here." Emily bit her lip, contemplating his words. It's probably harmless, right? We'll just follow the steps carefully. Besides, it might help us understand what's going on in this place. We've already sensed something here. What if we could communicate with it? David sighed, a reluctant smile creeping onto his face. Okay, let's give it a shot. Just a little ritual, then we can call it a night. If anything feels off, we stop. With that agreement, they set about arranging the candles in a circle on the cabin's floor. The flames flickered gently, casting warm pools of light against the walls and revealing shadows that danced eerily in response. Emily placed the journal in the center, its pages open to the ritual instructions. As they took their seats, an electric anticipation buzzed in the air, making the hairs on their arms stand on end. "All right, here we go," Emily said, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She glanced at David, who nodded encouragingly. They began to recite the lines from the journal, their voices weaving together like threads of an ancient tapestry. With each word, the atmosphere thickened, as if the very air around them was holding its breath. As they chanted, the flames flickered wildly, illuminating the cabin with an ethereal glow. Shadows lengthened and twisted, seeming to stretch toward them with a mind of their own. The air around them felt charged, a palpable energy swirling in the confined space. The temperature began to drop sharply, their breaths now visible in the dim light. Emily's heart raced as the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on them, filling the room with a palpable tension. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the cabin as the door slammed shut. Emily gasped, her eyes darting to David, whose expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. The energy intensified, crackling like static in the air, wrapping around them like a heavy shroud. The shadows grew darker, shifting ominously in the candlelight, as if something ancient and powerful was awakening from a long slumber. Did you feel that David's voice was barely above a whisper, edged with fear? The shadows seemed to pulse, resonating with the incantations still hanging in the air. Emily nodded, her heart pounding as she felt an unsettling presence enveloping them. The candle flames flickered violently, casting eerie shapes on the walls, each one more grotesque than the last. As the ritual progressed, the whispers from the dark corners of the cabin began to swell, echoing their incantation in a chorus that sent shivers racing down Emily's spine. With each passing moment, the atmosphere thickened, tension coiling tighter around them like a noose. Emily could almost make out the distinct whispers of names and pleas, intertwining with their own voices, creating a haunting harmony that reverberated in her mind. They were no longer just reciting lines from a book, they were part of something much larger, teetering on the edge of a threshold that blurred the lines between the living and the forgotten. Gripping David's hand, she pressed on, channeling every ounce of her energy into the final words. The cabin seemed to tremble, a vibration coursing through the floorboards, and she could feel the very essence of the forest rising to meet them. The shadows roared to life, swirling into a tempest that threatened to engulf them both. Panic surged through them as the whispers escalated into a deafening roar. David rushed to the door, but it held fast, as if an unseen force were preventing their escape. The symbols on the walls pulsed with an eerie glow, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and writhed like tortured souls. Emily felt the cabin itself closing in, the very air thickening with a suffocating darkness that clawed at their senses, desperate to consume them. The flickering candlelight struggled against the encroaching shadows, revealing nightmarish shapes lurking just beyond the reach of illumination. The whispers, now a relentless clamor, morphed into anguished cries, each syllable laced with desperation and fury. Emily's heart raced as she saw the outlines of figures forming in the corners, translucent and contorted, their faces a blend of sorrow and rage. It was as if the spirits tethered to the cabin had awakened, hungry for acknowledgement and furious at being disturbed. The air crackled with energy, thick and charged, sending shivers down their spines. Dark tendrils of shadow writhed along the walls, intertwining with the symbols and wrapping around the candles, snuffing out their feeble flames one by one. Each extinguished light felt like a heartbeat lost, plunging them deeper into an abyss of terror. The temperature plummeted, a chilling wind swirling through the room, carrying with it the faint scent of decay, as if the very essence of the cabin's dark history was spilling into their reality. As the last candle flickered out, the whispers rose to a frenzied pitch, becoming a symphony of despair. Shapes surged toward them, eyes glowing with malice, mouths agape in silent screams. Emily clutched David's arm, her voice lost in the storm of sound. The walls seemed to pulse, and she could feel the cabin vibrating with the energy of countless spirits, each one trapped in a limbo of their own making, longing to be freed or seeking retribution. In that moment of sheer horror, the shadows conspired against them, eager to ensnare the living in their eternal grasp. As they fled the cabin, the cacophony of howling shadows echoed in their ears, driving them forward into the tempest. The rain lashed at their faces, stinging their skin, but neither Emily nor David dared to slow down. They could feel the heat of the flames from the cabin behind them, a monstrous blaze that painted the dark sky with a hellish glow. Every instinct screamed for them to escape, to outrun the horror that pursued them. In their frantic flight, Emily's gaze was drawn to the grove of trees ahead, their gnarled trunks adorned with intricate carvings that glimmered with an otherworldly blue light. The trees, she shouted, pointing as they approached the circle. The glow intensified, illuminating their path and casting a shimmering aura that felt strangely protective. The air around the grove crackled with energy, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling behind them. As they dashed past the trees, the twisted figures pursuing them lunged forward, clawing at the air, desperate to breach the glowing perimeter. But as soon as they crossed the threshold of the carved trees, a sudden surge of power erupted. The monsters writhed and shrieked, their forms dissolving into nothingness, reduced to dust by the pulsing light that radiated from the trunks. Emily and David dared not look back, their hearts racing as they pushed deeper into the grove. It dawned on them that the trees formed a protective circle, a barrier that contained the dark entities within the confines of the cabin and its immediate surroundings. The sight filled them with a renewed sense of hope, though dread still lingered in the air. They felt the essence of the forest wrapping around them, a powerful entity that had been slumbering until this very moment. The light from the trees began to pulse rhythmically, illuminating the space with a mesmerizing brilliance, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms on the ground. Suddenly the glow spread from the tree's roots, a brilliant blue light coursing through the earth like a living heartbeat. The forest felt alive, as if awakening from a long slumber to reclaim its strength. The air vibrated with energy, creating an electric sensation that surged through Emily and David, igniting their senses. It was as if the trees were not merely witnesses to their struggle but active participants in the battle against the dark forces unleashed. With a deafening rumble, a shock wave radiated from the roots of the trees, sweeping through the grove. The ground quaked beneath their feet, and they could feel the power surging around them, pushing outward in a fierce wave. The pulsating blue light erupted from the trees, engulfing everything in its path. In that blinding moment, the remnants of the twisted figures were obliterated, turning to ash as the shock wave expanded. The energy resonated through the air, a triumphant chorus that echoed with the strength of nature reclaiming its territory. The chaos of the storm began to dissipate, the howling wind transforming into a gentle breeze that whispered through the leaves. The oppressive weight that had hung over the cabin and the surrounding woods lifted, leaving behind an atmosphere of serenity. As the last remnants of darkness faded, the grove settled into a peaceful silence, illuminated by the soft, pulsing light of the trees, which now stood sentinel against the shadows. In the distance, they could see the cabin slowly reverting to its former state, the flames extinguishing, leaving behind only smoke and the charred outline of a once menacing structure. The air felt lighter, infused with the essence of the forest, as if the very earth was breathing a sigh of relief. David and Emily stood together, catching their breath, the realization of what they had faced beginning to sink in. Did we really just? Emily started, but words failed her as she gazed at the now dim glow of the trees. They had survived, but the memory of the night's terror would linger, a haunting reminder of the darkness that still prowled the edges of the world. Yet, here in the embrace of the ancient grove, they felt a flicker of hope, the realization that perhaps they were not alone, that the power of nature itself was on their side, guarding them against the horrors that lurked beyond. With the remnants of the cabin still echoing in their minds, Emily and David pressed on through the moonlit woods, the silver light casting an ethereal glow on the path ahead. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth and pine, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. Every rustle in the underbrush sent shivers down their spines, but they pushed forward, determined to distance themselves from the horrors of the night. After what felt like hours of navigating the darkened forest, they stumbled upon a cave mouth, its entrance framed by jagged rocks and ivy. The sight provided a sense of refuge, and they exchanged glances of relief. "Let's wait here until dawn," David suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. Inside, the cool air wrapped around them, offering a momentary sanctuary from the wildness outside. As they ventured deeper into the cave, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot was the only sound breaking the silence. Faint glimmers of bioluminescent fungi illuminated the walls, casting a gentle blue hue that felt oddly comforting. They paused as David's foot struck something solid. Clearing away some debris, he uncovered a wooden chest, its surface adorned with carvings similar to those on the trees outside. "Do you think it's safe?" Emily asked, her curiosity piqued. David nodded, his face lit with excitement as he pried the chest open. Inside, they found an assortment of items that radiated a peaceful energy: bundles of dried herbs, twine made from natural fibers, and crystal vials filled with colorful liquids that sparkled like stars. Each object seemed to pulse with positive intent, as if waiting to be used in rituals of healing and protection. At the bottom of the chest lay a beautifully bound book, its cover embossed with delicate patterns that mirrored the carvings they had seen. Carefully, Emily lifted it out and opened it to find Margaret's neat handwriting. As she read, her heart sank. The words revealed a chilling history of the family who had once inhabited the cabin, detailing their foray into the occult. Margaret wrote of how her family had summoned dark entities, opening a portal to a dimension rife with malevolence. The devastating consequences had led to the loss of most of her family, forcing her to bear the weight of their mistakes alone. The journal chronicled Margaret's lifelong dedication to maintaining the veil between worlds, an arduous task that had consumed her existence. She detailed her struggles, noting the gradual weakening of the boundary due to her family's actions. Each passage weighed heavily with sorrow, as she expressed her determination to protect the world from the horrors that could spill forth. The gravity of her sacrifice became painfully clear as Emily read on. Margaret revealed that she had decided to offer her life to cast a final spell, a desperate attempt to create a protective barrier around the cabin. It was a chance to contain the evil that had threatened to engulf everything she held dear. With each word, Emily felt a profound connection to this woman who had fought so valiantly against the darkness. Margaret had insisted that the carved trees be preserved. They were integral to the boundary's strength. Disturbing them would lead to the very consequences she sought to prevent. As they sat in the cave, a somber realization settled over them. The forest was vast and uncharted, and while they had survived this ordeal, they couldn't shake the feeling that the cabin's dark legacy was still alive. They hoped no one else would venture this far into the woods and unwittingly disrupt the protective circle of trees. The thought lingered like a shadow, a reminder of the fragile balance that rested in the hands of those who understood what had happened there. Time passed slowly as they waited for dawn, the weight of Margaret's story hanging in the air. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath, the forest still and watchful. They exchanged silent glances, each one acknowledging the shared burden of their discovery. As the first light began to break, illuminating the cave in soft hues of pink and gold, they felt a sense of resolve. Though the cabin had burned, and the dark figures were now nothing more than echoes, the memories would remain etched in their minds, forever a testament to the choices made and the sacrifices borne in the name of protection. With that thought, they stepped out into the emerging day, ready to leave the horrors behind and find their way back home. The cabin stood solemnly as dawn broke, bathed in the soft light of morning. Its charred edges were stark against the clearing, yet a lingering darkness seemed to pulse within its walls. The air was thick with remnants of fear, as if the very structure was holding its breath, waiting for the next curious souls to wander too close. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows that danced along the ground, whispering secrets of the past. The symbols carved into the surrounding trunks glimmered faintly, as if alive, guarding the boundary between worlds. Though silence reigned, a sense of anticipation hung in the air, a reminder that the cabin's story was far from over. It waited, patient and eternal, knowing that its power could awaken again at the slightest provocation. The Whispering Depths. In the heart of the ocean lies a remote island, a dark silhouette rising from the waves, shrouded in a thick, unsettling fog that rolls over the jagged cliffs like a spectral shroud. The island is marked by sheer granite faces, battered and worn by centuries of relentless tides, creating an ominous landscape that seems to stretch endlessly into the horizon. Here the air is heavy with the briny scent of salt, a tang that lingers on the tongue, mixing with the damp chill that hangs in the air. The shoreline is littered with sharp rocks and driftwood, remnants of vessels that dared to approach but never returned. The surrounding waters are treacherous, swirling with unpredictable currents that can pull even the most seasoned sailor into their depths. Beneath the surface, the ocean teems with life, but it is a life tinged with an unsettling mystery, where shadows dart just out of sight, and the glimmer of scales is often the last thing seen. Evelyn had always felt a profound connection to the ocean, a bond that was forged in her childhood along the rocky shores of her coastal hometown. As a young girl, she spent countless hours exploring tide pools, captivated by the vibrant life teeming beneath the surface. Her father, a fisherman, would regale her with stories of the sea's mysteries, its depths hiding treasures and terrors alike. Those formative experiences ignited a passion for marine biology, leading her to pursue advanced studies at a prestigious university. Her academic journey was marked by a relentless drive to uncover the secrets of the deep, and she often sought out the most enigmatic locations to study their ecosystems. The island of the lost had long intrigued her, a whispered name in the halls of her school, a place of both danger and allure. Evelyn first heard about the island during a lecture on maritime folklore, where a professor spoke of its eerie reputation among local fishermen. He described the unsettling atmosphere, the ghostly lights, and the chilling tales of those who had ventured too close, only to vanish without a trace. The professor's words resonated within her, sparking a fascination that grew into an obsession. She spent weeks poring over old journals, maritime records, and folklore, piecing together the island's dark history. The more she learned, the more she felt compelled to see it for herself. This wasn't just an academic pursuit, it was a quest for understanding, a chance to delve into the mysteries that had eluded so many. Local fishermen, their faces etched with lines of worry and weather beaten by the elements, gather in the small villages scattered along nearby islands. They speak in hushed tones of the island of the lost, their eyes flickering with fear and respect. The tales they tell are woven with threads of caution, recounting the fates of those who dared to venture too close. The sea has a mind of its own, one elder warns, his voice gravelly as he gestures towards the horizon. It calls to the curious, but it is a deceitful mistress. The fishermen recount the eerie silences that envelop the waters surrounding the island, broken only by the distant, haunting songs that echo through the fog, luring the unwary into a watery grave. Each story serves as a reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and that the allure of the island is a treacherous trap for the unprepared. On stormy nights when the wind howls like a banshee, the villagers can see the glow of strange lights flickering against the dark cliffs. They claim these lights are the spirits of those lost to the sea, forever searching for a way back to shore. The island itself seems alive, its pulse quickening with the changing tides. Every crashing wave against the rocks carries the weight of whispered warnings, tales of the cult that once thrived in the shadows, performing rituals to appease the sea's insatiable hunger. The fog, thick and suffocating, rolls in like an unwelcome guest, wrapping around the island and obscuring the view of the treacherous cliffs. Those who venture too close find themselves disoriented, as if the island itself bends reality, leading them further into its embrace. As the sun sets, the atmosphere shifts and the island transforms into a realm of shadows and whispers. The fishermen gather around flickering lanterns in their huts, sharing stories that send shivers down spines, their faces illuminated by the warm glow that contrasts with the encroaching darkness. Children listen wide-eyed, their imaginations running wild with the tales of the island's secrets and the dread that surrounds it. It is a place where folklore and reality blur, where the boundaries of the living and the lost dissolve into the night. For some, the island is a cautionary tale, but for others it serves as a beacon, a siren call that promises untold secrets beneath its treacherous surface, a mystery waiting to be unveiled by those brave enough to confront the unknown. Before setting sail for the island, Evelyn made a stop at the nearby fishing village. The village, with its quaint wooden houses and weather-beaten docks, served as the last bastion of civilization before the treacherous waters of the island claimed their prey. Here, she sought out the fishermen, eager to gather first-hand accounts of their experiences and the legends that surrounded the island. As she wandered through the village, she felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, the salty air thick with an undercurrent of fear. The villagers were wary, their expressions a blend of concern and pity as they regarded her determination. They shared stories of lost ships, of crews drawn into the fog by an irresistible call, and of the chilling silence that enveloped the waters when the fog rolled in. Despite their warnings, Evelyn was undeterred. She listened intently, taking notes and asking questions, driven by an insatiable curiosity that eclipsed her growing unease. A particular tale caught her attention, a story about a sailor who had survived an encounter with the cult that resided on the island, claiming to have heard the voices of the drowned calling out to him. This tale, rich with the haunting allure of the unknown, solidified her resolve. She left the village with her boat stocked with supplies, her heart racing with the thrill of impending discovery. As she set sail into the churning waves, the ominous clouds overhead mirrored her own conflicted emotions, an exhilarating mix of dread and anticipation, as if the island itself awaited her arrival with a sinister invitation. Upon reaching the shore, Evelyn felt the chill of the sea air wrap around her like a shroud. The boat had creaked and groaned under the weight of her supplies as she navigated the turbulent waters, her heart racing with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. The island rose before her, a jagged silhouette against the slate-gray sky, its cliffs looming like ancient sentinels guarding the secrets of the deep. As she stepped onto the rocky beach, the coarse sand crunched beneath her boots, and she instinctively glanced over her shoulder, half expecting the fog to swallow her whole. The air was thick with the scent of brine and decay, and an eerie silence enveloped her. As she ventured further, the remnants of past voyages began to reveal themselves. Fragments of shipwrecks jutted out from the sand, their weathered timbers bleached and worn by relentless tides. Each piece seemed to tell a story of its own, whispering the names of those lost to the sea. Evelyn felt an unsettling shiver run down her spine, as if the very island itself held the weight of countless souls who had met their fate here. Among the wreckage, her eye was drawn to an old leather journal, partially buried in the damp earth. She knelt to retrieve it, brushing away the sand that clung to its cover. The moment her fingers grazed the worn surface, a jolt of electricity surged through her. As she flipped through the entries, her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and dread. The pages were yellowed and frayed, filled with the hurried scrawl of a sailor who had encountered the cult that resided on this cursed land. Each entry painted a vivid picture of bizarre rituals and dark offerings to the sea, invoking an unseen force that lingered just beneath the surface. The last few pages sent chills through her as they detailed the sailor's frantic descent into madness. They seek to summon the sea itself. "I fear I am to be their next sacrifice," the final words clawed at her mind, heavy with foreboding. Evelyn shivered, the weight of the sailor's fate looming over her like a storm cloud. Yet she couldn't shake the memory of his return to the village. Alive and recounting his tale, perhaps his experiences were merely exaggerated, distorted by fear and the unknown. Still, a gnawing unease took root in her stomach, and she couldn't help but wonder what truths lay buried beneath the island's enigmatic surface, waiting for someone foolish enough to uncover them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs, Evelyn felt the temperature drop sharply. The vibrant colors of day surrendered to the muted grays and blues of twilight, transforming the island into an unsettling silhouette against the dimming sky. She wandered along the rocky shore, her thoughts a turbulent sea of anticipation and dread. The remnants of shipwrecks loomed behind her, their ghostly forms emerging from the thickening mist, as if they were the island's guardians, silently warning her to turn back. Each crashing wave echoed a warning, its roar carrying the voices of those lost to the depths. The sea air turned sharp, stinging her lungs, and she shivered involuntarily, a primal instinct telling her that darkness was descending not just on the land, but on her very soul. With the last light fading, a haunting melody began to weave its way through the stillness, pulling her further into the heart of the island. The song was unlike anything she had ever heard, a blend of eerie harmonies and dissonant notes that resonated in her bones, stirring something deep within her. It was a sound that seemed to echo from the ocean itself, rising and falling like the waves, laced with a sorrowful longing that tugged at her heart. The melody flowed and ebbed, punctuated by the distant cries of seabirds settling for the night, creating a haunting symphony that blurred the lines between reality and dream. Each note felt like a whisper from the depths, beckoning her closer with promises of hidden knowledge and untold secrets. As the shadows grew longer and the fog thickened, she instinctively tightened her grip on the sailor's journal, its weight a reminder of the dark history that lay entwined with this place. The song grew more insistent, wrapping around her like a fog, its seductive cadence compelling her to abandon caution. In the distance, she glimpsed flickers of light dancing through the mist, their flickering glow echoing the rhythm of the melody. It felt as if the island itself was alive, breathing in time with the music, urging her forward into its embrace. Evelyn felt a strange connection to the melody, as if it were woven from the very essence of the sea, capturing the emotions of countless souls lost, yearning, and restless. As twilight fell, the island transformed into a realm of stark contrasts. The vivid hues of day surrendered to an enveloping gloom, and the air grew heavy, thick with tension and anticipation. An ominous hush blanketed the land, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves against the rocks, a relentless reminder of the power and mystery of the ocean. It was in this moment of stillness that Evelyn heard a distant, haunting melody weaving through the air like a silken thread. Compelled by a force she could neither name nor resist, she found her feet moving, the damp earth soft beneath her boots. The song led her deeper into the island, away from the shore and into a secluded clearing where flickering firelight danced in the darkness. Hidden behind a gnarled tree, she peered through the leaves, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. What she saw sent chills coursing through her. Hooded figures stood in a circle, their faces shrouded in shadow. They chanted in a guttural language that sent a shiver down her spine, their voices rising and falling like the tide itself, a dark rhythm that pulsed with the island's very essence. The flames cast eerie shadows, illuminating grotesque offerings laid at their feet, an unblinking fish with eyes that seemed to follow her every move, a twisted doll adorned with shells, each piece a testament to their dark devotion. In that moment the melody shifted, its tone deepening, as if the island itself held its breath, waiting for the culmination of some ancient, unspeakable rite. The weight of their collective intent hung in the air, a prelude to the chaos that was about to unfold. The chanting swells, resonating within her like a distant storm, a siren song that claws at her sanity. Evelyn feels the pull of the sea within her, the whispers growing louder, wrapping around her mind like tendrils of smoke, thick and intoxicating. Each note feels alive, vibrating in the marrow of her bones, stirring something primordial deep within her. The rhythm is hypnotic, each repetition drawing her closer to the firelit circle where the hooded figures sway as one, their bodies moving in a choreographed dance that speaks of ancient rites and forgotten truths. The air thickens with the scent of salt and something darker, an earthy musk that evokes a sense of longing she cannot comprehend. In this moment, Evelyn becomes acutely aware of the world around her, yet it feels both alien and familiar. The shadows cast by the flickering flames twist and elongate, morphing into forms that seem to reach for her, their grasping fingers beckoning her to join their communion. The whispers invade her thoughts, weaving promises of profound understanding and connection to the ocean's depths, knowledge that few mortals have ever touched. She envisions herself swimming through the abyss, unearthing secrets that lie beneath the waves, seeing the ocean not just as a body of water, but as a vast, sentient entity, filled with life and wisdom. Visions of the drowned flood, her mind faces twisted in anguish yet suffused with a desperate yearning for liberation. They emerge from the depths, eyes wide and pleading, their mouths moving in silent cries that send shivers down her spine. "Join us," they murmur, their voices a haunting symphony of sorrow, harmonizing with the cult's chant. The allure is intoxicating. It feels like a promise of belonging, a call to abandon the constraints of her past life and immerse herself in the mysteries of the abyss. The weight of her own existence begins to fade, replaced by the intoxicating prospect of becoming one with the ocean's ancient rhythms. Yet, even as she teeters on the brink of surrender, a flicker of doubt stirs within her. What price must she pay for such power? The whispers are seductive, offering knowledge of tides that turn and currents that swirl, of creatures that dwell in darkness, and of ancient rites that can awaken forces long since forgotten. but they also murmur of sacrifices made, lives lost in the pursuit of this forbidden wisdom. As the chanting crescendos, she realizes that every secret comes with a cost, and the thought of being entwined in a fate entwined with the depths ignites a flicker of fear in her heart. This knowledge, tantalizing yet terrifying, is the true price of the abyss, one she must weigh carefully before stepping into the darkness that beckons her so seductively. Driven by desperation, Evelyn finally confronts the cult, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you seek?" she demands, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The cult members turn toward her, their eyes glimmering with a mixture of surprise and hunger. They reveal their ultimate goal: to summon a creature from the depths, a being that will grant them power beyond imagination. But the price is steep: the life of a chosen one, a sacrifice to the sea that will open the gates to untold strength. They gaze at her with predatory interest, believing her passion for the ocean makes her the perfect vessel for their dark ambitions. A chill runs down her spine as the reality of her situation sets in. She is the offering they seek. The cult believes Evelyn is the ideal vessel, not just because of her deep-seated connection to the ocean, but due to her unique lineage. As they explain, she descends from a long line of mariners and ocean scholars, her ancestors rumored to have had profound ties to the sea's mysteries. Legends passed down through generations tell of a bloodline marked by an affinity for the ocean, a trait that is rare and coveted. The cult has long sought a vessel who could not only channel Thalassian's power but also withstand the spiritual burdens that come with it. Evelyn's lineage imbues her with an innate strength, one they believe is necessary to bear the weight of such an ancient entity. The cult members share a dark history, revealing that many who have come before her, passionate lovers of the sea, failed in their attempts to serve as vessels. These previous sacrifices, despite their fervor and zeal, lack the deep-rooted connection to the ocean that Evelyn possesses. They reveal that the tides have a memory, a pulse that resonates with certain individuals more than others. Her experiences along the coast, her intuitive understanding of the ocean's moods, and her relentless quest for knowledge mark her as something exceptional. The cult believes that she embodies the very essence of the sea, giving her an unprecedented potential to merge with Thalassian and survive the ordeal. The cult's lore speaks of Thalassian as a being not merely of flesh and scale, but as an ancient force woven into the fabric of the ocean itself. This Leviathan is said to embody the duality of the sea, its beauty and serenity, juxtaposed with its tempestuous rage. For centuries, the cult has sought to awaken this creature, believing it holds the key to wielding the ocean's power. They wish to reshape the balance of nature itself, seeking dominion over the waves, storms, and even the very currents of fate. Thalassian is described in their texts as a guardian of lost souls and forgotten knowledge, its awakening seen as a means to reclaim lost wisdom and unlock powers that could grant them unimaginable strength. Yet awakening Thalassian is not merely an act of calling forth a creature, it is a complex ritual demanding a vessel who can withstand the merging of souls. The transformation is fraught with peril. It requires a heart steeped in respect for the sea and a spirit willing to embrace both its light and darkness. The cult reveals that past vessels who lacked a profound respect for the ocean were consumed by their own hubris, their minds shattered in the process, leaving only madness behind. In their eyes, Evelyn's unwavering passion makes her a beacon of hope, a chance to finally succeed where others have failed. Before Evelyn could fully comprehend the implications of their words, the cult's grip on her tightened. They had anticipated her inquiries, and as she stood her ground, the members began to close in, their chants rising in a feverish crescendo. With a sudden force, they seized her, ropes of seaweed entwining around her wrists, binding her to the very essence of the ocean she revered. Panic surged within her, but her resolve hardened. They dragged her toward the fire-lit circle, their intentions clear. She was not merely an inquisitive scholar anymore, she had become a captive, a pawn in their dark game. The flickering flames illuminated their faces, revealing twisted smiles that reflected their hunger for power. Evelyn's heart raced as they prepared her for the sacrifice, whispering dark promises of power and secrets only the chosen could access. As they positioned her at the center of their ritual, she felt the weight of her lineage pressing down on her, the voices of her ancestors urging her to fight. This was not merely a matter of survival, it was a test of her very essence. She understood that her connection to the ocean was more than just a passion, it was her legacy, and she could not allow it to be twisted by those who sought to exploit it. Evelyn recognizes that the cult's ambition threatens the very balance they seek to control. The Lassian is not a creature to be tamed or exploited, it embodies the untamed spirit of the ocean. She understands that the awakening of such a being carries profound implications, not just for the cult, but for the world at large. The thought of harnessing the ocean's power for domination sends a chill through her, igniting a fierce determination within her. She knows that she must not only confront the cult, but also challenge their understanding of the ocean and the creature they seek to awaken. In this moment of clarity, Evelyn draws on the wisdom of her ancestors, recalling the stories of balance and respect that were passed down to her. She steps forward, resolute, ready to challenge the cult's misguided intentions. "You do not understand the true nature of the sea," she declares, her voice steady. "The Lassian is not your pawn, is a guardian. You seek to dominate it, but the ocean does not yield to those who do not respect its power." As the chanting grows louder and the firelight flickers around her, Evelyn feels the weight of her lineage and the legacy of those who came before her. She understands that her confrontation with the cult is not just about her life, it is about preserving the sanctity of the ocean and the balance that must be maintained. In this defining moment, she is prepared to fight for the truth that resonates within her, a truth that binds her to the sea and calls her to protect its mysteries from those who would exploit them. As the cult's chants reached a fever pitch, Evelyn felt the ropes of seaweed binding her wrists tighten painfully, drawing her closer to the flickering flames. In that moment of impending doom, panic surged through her, igniting an instinctual fight or flight response. She struggled against her bindings, her heart pounding as she scanned her surroundings for any means of escape. The air grew thick with tension, crackling with the energy of the ritual, and a strange sensation washed over her. A connection to the very spirits the cult sought to manipulate. It was as if the ocean itself whispered in her ear, urging her to remember the stories her father had told her as a child, tales of those lost to the depths who could be called upon in times of dire need. A vision suddenly flickered in her mind, a memory of an ancient gathering at the shoreline where her ancestors had invoked the spirits of the drowned. They had chanted in a tongue that resonated with the ocean's ebb and flow, a language imbued with power and respect for the sea. With that memory flooding her consciousness, she felt an electric charge coursing through her veins. In her desperation, Evelyn summoned the remnants of that ancient knowledge, her voice rising above the cacophony of the cult's chants. "Spirits of the lost, heed my call," she cried, the words flowing from her as if they were etched into her very soul. The energy in the air shifted palpably, swirling around her in a tempest of dark blues and greens, mirroring the chaotic waters beyond. As she continued to chant, her voice harmonizing with the rhythm of the waves, the atmosphere thickened with an almost tangible weight. The air became charged with a spectral energy, shimmering with an ethereal light that danced at the edge of her vision. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp around her, pulling her deeper into a connection with the sea. "Ancestors of the deep, rise with me. You who have been wronged, I summon your strength." The words tumbled from her lips, each syllable resonating with the essence of the ocean, bridging the gap between the living and the lost. The cult members faltered, their chants losing coherence as they felt the shifting tide of power, their dark ambitions threatened by the resurgence of those they sought to control. At that moment, the sea erupted in a violent frenzy. Waves crashed violently against the cliffs, sending sprays of salty mist into the air, as if the ocean itself responded to her plea. From the depths, a creature began to rise, a monstrous amalgamation of fish and human, glistening with scales that caught the flickering firelight, the very embodiment of the sacrifices the cult had made. Evelyn felt a surge of raw energy course through her as the creature's eyes glowed with primal fury, reflecting the deep anguish of the souls it represented. The atmosphere crackled with a newfound intensity, charged with both terror and awe, as she watched the creature turn on its summoners. In that moment, she understood that she had not merely called upon the spirits, she had awakened them, summoning their wrath against those who sought to exploit the ocean's sacred depths. As the chaos enveloped the ritual site, Evelyn stood at the center of the maelstrom, a deep clarity settling within her. The realization struck like a thunderclap to quell the creature born from the cult's greed, and to sever their dark connection to the sea. She must make the ultimate sacrifice. The ocean had chosen her not just as a vessel of its power, but as a guardian of its balance. It demanded a heavy price, one that would require her to relinquish her life for the sake of the world around her. The tumult of the sea roared in response, as if acknowledging her resolve. Evelyn took a deep breath, steadying herself as she faced the monstrous creature rising from the depths, its form a chaotic blend of beauty and terror. She could feel the anguish of the spirits she had invoked, their presence swirling around her, urging her to act. "You are not a weapon," she whispered to the creature, her voice firm yet compassionate. "You are a force of nature, a guardian of this realm. Together we can cleanse this island of its darkness." With newfound purpose, she began to chant once more, this time invoking the very essence of the ocean itself. "Let the tides reclaim what has been lost. Let the depths rise and wash away the shadows." As she spoke, the air trembled with energy, resonating with her call. The waves surged higher, a cacophony of water and fury converging upon the island. The creature, responding to her plea, plunged into the sea's depths, summoning a surge of water that swirled around them both. Evelyn felt the pull of the ocean deep within her, a connection that transcended her own existence. With every syllable of her chant, she wove her essence into the very fabric of the tide, calling forth a storm that would cleanse the land of its dark history. The cult, caught in their own hubris, found themselves engulfed in the rising waves, their screams swallowed by the surging sea. With one final, resolute command, Evelyn unleashed the full force of the ocean. The water rose higher, a towering wall of liquid fury that cascaded over the island, drowning its remnants beneath a turbulent tide. As she felt the life around her beginning to fade, a profound sense of peace enveloped her. In that moment of surrender, she understood that her sacrifice would restore balance, allowing the ocean to reclaim what was rightfully its. With her last breath, she whispered a final goodbye, embracing the depths as the waves closed over her. Days later, the sun rose on a tranquil shore where the island once stood, its existence erased by the might of the sea. On the sand, a few of Evelyn's belongings washed ashore: a crumpled sailor's journal, its pages soaked and frayed, and a necklace that glimmered faintly in the morning light. But there was no sign of Evelyn, nor of the cult that had sought to exploit the ocean's power. The whispers of the sea lingered, a haunting reminder of her sacrifice, as the tides continued to flow, forever altered by the choices made in the depths of that fateful night. Those who found her belongings would tell tales of the island's mysteries, but the truth of Evelyn's journey would remain hidden beneath the waves, a secret woven into the heart of the ocean itself. As you listen to this tale, Remember, the sea holds secrets, ancient and powerful. Those who dare to seek its truth must tread carefully, for some whispers are meant to remain unheard. The ocean is not merely a body of water, it is a living entity, teeming with life and laden with history. It can offer connection and understanding, but it can also ensnare the unwary in its dark embrace. Evelyn's journey into the depths of the unknown serves as a warning to us all in the pursuit of knowledge. We must also be willing to confront the shadows that lie within ourselves. As we reach the end of tonight's stories on Hauntales, it's time to let your mind drift away. Listen to the sound of the rain gently falling in the background. Let each drop calm your thoughts and ease you into a peaceful sleep. There's nothing to fear now, just the soothing rhythm of the rain. Focus on your breathing, let your body relax, and allow yourself to drift deeper into rest. Sleep peacefully, and we'll meet again tomorrow night for another story. Good night.